In this video, I'll walk you through installing Proxmox, a simple, free alternative to VMware that makes managing VMs and containers easy. And here's the thing, if you don't configure it properly, you will run into performance issues later. Stick around and I'll show you how to get Proxmox running smoothly. And now first, what is virtualization? It's sort of a way to run a computer inside a computer, meaning you can run several instances of Linux or Windows inside one server, and they will share the resources CPU, RAM, and disk. And all the servers will believe that they are the server. So managing these servers won't be any different from managing normal hardware-based servers. So let's get going. First of all, where do you download Proxmox? It's as easy as going to this search window and just type in Proxmox. Basically, you want to download it from the authentic sources. Their website, proxmox.com. So the place you want to download Proxmox from is proxmox.com. I'll just go to downloads. Here you have several possibilities to choose from, but the one that you want is the Proxmox VE ISO installer. Just press download on that, save, and there we go. And another important thing to think about is the USB media that you will be using, because you want to burn or write this ISO image to a USB stick. And it's pretty important that the USB stick is of good quality. So something handling USB 3 is best, but of course if you have something else that would work too, if you have enough space for the image, which is 1.5 gigabytes. But for me, I will just use a high quality USB stick, because what's worse than being halfway into the install and then have it crash or freeze or something like that. While it's downloading, we can talk about what software do you use to write the USB stick. I'm going to use something called Rufus. It creates bootable USB drives the easy way. Their website is rufus.ie, and I have already downloaded and installed this. But I guess that if you're on this list, you might want to choose the portable version of Rufus, because then you won't have to install it. You can just use it. Alright, so the download is done. I'm going to plug the USB stick into my computer. There we go. It's gonna show up. Good. I'm gonna start Rufus. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm gonna start Rufus. Do you want this app to make changes to your device? Yes, I want. I see that this is already selected for me. It's the Kingston Data Traveler, which is the USB stick that I'm using. On the boot selection, I'd want to choose disk or ISO image. Please select. I can press select. Choose the Proxmox ISO. It says that the image that I have selected is an ISO hybrid image, but they haven't made it compatible with ISO or file copy mode. So they're going to use DD, which is a sort of a raw copy, which is okay for me. Using image Proxmox, USB stick. It's pretty important that this is correct, because or else it's going to write over, for example, your current hard drive, which is something you don't want. So let's go. All data on device will be destroyed. Sounds good. Yeah. Let's go. The reason that it's telling me that it has multiple partitions is because I've already done this once, just to try it out. So it's writing the image. So while it's doing that, What's the big deal with Proxmox? Well, it supports live migration without any licenses. It supports backup and clustering and a lot of enterprise-safe features without paying for it. So that's why after VMware changed their licensing model, a lot of people went over to Proxmox or different free solutions. But I think Proxmox is one of the best. The differences or the trade-offs between VMware and Proxmox is that VMware has a more enterprisey, polished user interface, while Proxmox isn't quite there yet. But in terms of features, I think that both are pretty good now. And I think if you take features versus price, then Proxmox is the definitive winner. Of course, because it's free. So free is always good, I guess. So, bam, it's done. Now I can close Rufus and I can unplug the USB stick, this one, and I'll plug it into the server that I'm planning to use, which is just an old desktop computer. You can use, of course, mostly any hardware that you want, as long as it's produced the last 10 years. I think you're going to be good, but of course you might want to up the RAM if you can. All right, so far so good. You've downloaded Proxmox, you've copied Proxmox onto your USB stick, and you should now insert the USB stick into the computer that you want to run Proxmox on. Sometimes to get it to boot from USB, you have to press a special key combo right at the beginning when you've turned on your computer. For me, that was F12. That gives me a boot menu and I can select which media I want to boot from. I, of course, selected my USB stick. So as soon as you boot the ISO, you get this image. You can select between Proxmox VE Graphical or Terminal, and you have advanced options. I'm going to use the graphical mode this round, and it's going to boot the graphical installer of Proxmox. It's going to connect. It's connecting to my network, getting DHCP, but I think we're going to change that IP address. Okay, we're in the graphical installer now. Here's the license agreement. I'm pretty sure you read that, and we can all agree. Now for this install, I'm using nested virtualization, meaning I'm running a Proxmox inside my Proxmox that I've installed, just because I couldn't screen grab on my first install. So, first of all, you have the installation target. For me, I have only one disk allocated, but if you have multiple disks, you can use RAID setups. For example, if you have two 1 terabyte disks, you can use CFS with the RAID 1. That's mirroring. That means if you choose this, you can select a hard disk 0 and your second disk as hard disk 1. In that case, if one of your disks fail, the system will keep on running because it's mirrored between the disks, and you will get an alert that one of your disks has failed and you have to replace it. The downside with that is that it uses twice the capacity, meaning if you have two 1 terabyte disks, which would have been 2 terabyte, you only get to use 1 terabyte because all the data has to be mirrored between the disks. So, if you plan to use replication between nodes and have multiple Proxmox servers talking together and sharing the data pool, you must use CFS. If you don't plan to use replication between nodes, you can choose ext4. In my case, I'm just going to use CFS. The rest of the installation is just like your location, time zone. You have to use select a password. I'm just going to use press to deploy. Press to deploy. Oh, press to deploy. Deploy. here's your network configuration. You can select your network card. If you have multiple, you must select the hostname. Just pvlab .lan. Select an IP address that makes sense for your case. And then you get the summary. I've selected file system CFS, SDA as the disk, Norway, Oslo, email address, management interface, host name, IP address, gateway, and DNS. Just confirm that, it looks good. And now it's gonna install it. I think you can expect this to take like less than 5 minutes. Basically installs a Debian system with the Proxmox software on top of it. And because I selected automatic reboot after installation, it's just gonna boot into Proxmox when it's completed. So it's quite easy. I'm not the type of person to be on camera, but if you like this kind of content, please subscribe. I'll be really happy about it. Yeah, now it's booting into Proxmox. Easy as that. Done. So to access the Proxmox that you just installed, you just go to the IP address of your Proxmox install, and then you use :8006. That's the port number that Proxmox listens on. There we go. You'll get this warning because the certificate is not valid. It's just a self-signed certificate from Proxmox. Then you have to use root and your password. From me it was press to deploy. Login. You don't have a valid subscription for this server because you can buy enterprise subscriptions for Proxmox. Here's the UI to create the server. You create VM, create a container, you create CT. Under summary is the summary of your node. You can see that I'm running on some old hardware. I have 2 CPUs. I have about 16 gigabytes of RAM, almost 100 gigs of storage. Under options, you can select the keyboard layout, if you need to use an HTTP proxy, and all that kind of jazz. Storage, that's your storage. So under users, you can add a new user if you want to. I'm going to use the Realm Proxmox VE. Add. Now I have a new user. You have API tokens if you want to use automation. You have 2-factor authentication if you want to use Google Authenticator or something like that. Under firewall options, you have the firewall configuration. You can create IP sets. Yeah, I guess that's about it for now. So, to sum it up, you've downloaded Proxmox, you've put it on a USB stick, you've installed it on a computer, and now you're ready to deploy VMs. Stick around. I hope I see you again very soon.